At 2 a.m., a government server downloads a routine software update. The file is signed. The vendor is trusted. Every security check says it belongs there. But hidden inside is a back door, and the people who built it may have just entered one of the most protected networks in the world. This was not a suspicious attachment or a stolen password. The victims installed the attacker's code themselves. The software was called Orion, made by a Texas company named SolarWinds. Large organizations used it to watch their networks, servers, routers, traffic, and failures, all collected in one place. That visibility made Orion useful. It also meant that Orion often sat deep inside a network, with the kind of access an intruder would normally spend months trying to obtain. The attackers did not begin by attacking Orion's customers. They went upstream. According to the United States Government Accountability Office, the campaign began in 2019. The intruders entered SolarWinds' environment and studied the machinery that produced software updates. Before deploying the real operation, they performed a dry run, placing test code into the build process and watching what happened. That detail matters. A modern software product is not assembled by one person pressing a button. Source code moves through automated systems that compile it, test it, package it, and sign it. Customers trust the final package because it came through that controlled pipeline. If an attacker compromises the pipeline itself, malicious code can inherit the appearance of legitimacy. Beginning in early 2020, the attackers inserted a hidden component into legitimate Orion builds. The poisoned updates were then distributed through SolarWinds' normal update system. They looked authentic because, in every ordinary sense, they were authentic products, built and delivered by the real vendor. The malicious component became known as SUNBURST. Once installed, it did not immediately announce itself. It waited, it checked its environment. It disguised its network traffic to resemble ordinary Orion activity. Then it contacted infrastructure controlled by the attackers and could receive further instructions. This patience was part of the design. Loud malware tries to act before it is caught. SUNBURST tried not to be noticed at all. SolarWinds estimated that nearly 18,000 customers could have received a compromised update. Imagine 18,000 doors, each opened by a key the owners believed was genuine. But the attackers did not rush through every door. GAO later reported that fewer than 100 customers were actually compromised beyond the initial infected software. The enormous distribution appears to have been a selection mechanism. The attackers could look across the field, identify valuable targets, and move deeper only where the intelligence was worth the risk. Among the victims were major companies and parts of the United States government. GAO reported that 9 federal agencies were compromised. The same tool designed to reveal what was happening inside a network had become a concealed observation post for someone outside it. From that foothold, the operation could move toward credentials, privileged accounts, email, and cloud resources. Microsoft described how attackers in this broader campaign could steal or abuse identity systems, including the mechanisms organizations use to prove that a login is legitimate. Once trust itself is forged, an attacker no longer has to break down every door. The building begins opening doors for them, and for months, the system kept working as designed. Updates arrived. Monitoring dashboards remained online. Employees logged in. Nothing about the ordinary appearance of the network revealed that its chain of trust had been altered. The operation began to unravel because another security company noticed something strange inside its own network. In November 2020, FireEye detected an intrusion. The company investigated how the attackers had entered and eventually traced the activity back to the Orion software. FireEye informed SolarWinds, and the discovery transformed an incident at one company into an emergency spanning governments and corporations. On December 13, 2020, the United States Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency issued Emergency Directive 21-01. Federal agencies were ordered to disconnect affected Orion products. This was not a request to install a normal patch and continue. Agencies had to assume that a trusted management tool might now be an entry point for an advanced attacker. Across the world, security teams searched for compromised versions, suspicious accounts, unusual cloud activity, and signs that the attackers had moved beyond the original backdoor. Removing the infected software was only the beginning. If credentials had already been stolen, the attacker could remain even after Orion disappeared. That is what made the incident so expensive and difficult. The question was no longer, is this file malicious? It was, which parts of our trust system can still be believed? The SolarWinds compromise exposed a weakness hidden inside almost every modern organization. No company builds everything it uses. Networks depend on vendors, libraries, cloud services, updates, certificates, and automatic deployment systems. Each dependency saves time. Each also extends the boundary of trust. Security had traditionally focused on the perimeter, block suspicious files, stop unknown connections, challenge unusual logins. But this code arrived from a known supplier through an expected channel with a valid signature. The warning signs security tools were trained to find had been replaced by signals of legitimacy. The lesson is not that software updates are dangerous. Refusing updates would leave systems exposed to thousands of known vulnerabilities. The lesson is that trust cannot be permanent or absolute, not even when the software is signed and the supplier is familiar. Organizations responded by separating critical systems, limiting privileges, monitoring build environments, and adopting a principle known as zero trust. Verify each request based on context, instead of assuming that anything inside the network is safe. Software makers also began examining the security of the pipelines that turn source code into products. For ordinary users, the same principle applies on a smaller scale. A familiar logo, a professional message, or a link that appears to come from a known company is not proof by itself. Modern attacks often succeed by borrowing trust rather than defeating security directly. The SolarWinds attackers did not need to break into 18,000 organizations one by one. They found the system those organizations already trusted and changed what that system delivered. The backdoor was hidden in code, but the real vulnerability was the assumption surrounding it. Signed meant safe, familiar meant verified, and an update meant protection. The most effective attacks do not always look like attacks. Sometimes they look exactly like the thing you were taught to trust.